Hey, thanks for listening. Please subscribe to our newsletter at theproductporch.com for notifications on the latest episodes and exclusive content.
Nobody knows what their differentiator is. If you say, I have a reputation for being customer obsessed, yeah, that's in the job description. You're not telling me anything interesting here.
Can you give me some examples of good differentiators you've seen? And then maybe how do you make this stand out in a resume?
Welcome to the Product Porch with Joe Ghali, Todd Blaquiere, and me, Ryan Cantwell. Today, Todd and Joe are joined by Nils Davis to discuss how to position yourself to win the job by treating your search like a product. Now settle in, folks, because on the Product Porch, every topic is a product topic.
Thank you very much, Joe, for that.
It never gets old, Todd. It never gets old.
I love that. Oh, I am so excited. We have a guest on our pod, back on the porch for a second time. And I will introduce him in a second. But first, I want to introduce our topic. I've been interviewing product managers recently and product marketing managers. I've had a couple of jobs posted. I have been disappointed the way that we answer some of these questions that I'm asking in the interview process. And I'll tell you this, I know I have a high bar. I'm going to be honest. I have a high bar.
Yeah.
Because look, when you say you're a product manager, that means something to me.
Yeah.
You say you're a product manager, I'm like, oh, then you walk the walk and you talk the talk. Let's get into it. And so I during this interview process, I've asked some questions. I'm going to give one quick example, and then we can talk about more later. But I start off every interview with, tell me what you know about our company. And man, the answers aren't that great. Most of the time, they might try to give me the mission statement that's on our website, but why can't you tell me who our customers are? Why can't you tell me who our users are, our value proposition, making guess at our value prop based on that stuff? Anyway, it's been disappointing. I want to get into it and talk about, see if we can help some of those product managers who are obviously struggling and help them better position themselves. And so who better to bring on the porch today than Nils Davis. Nils is our friend. It's the second time here. He helps product managers and other ambitious professionals stop underselling themselves. And he especially focuses on resumes and interviews, how to talk about their work. He's a former enterprise PM. He's the author of The Secret Product Manager Handbook. And he's kind of a wizard when it comes to taking vague career mush and turning it into high impact stories. We'll talk about how most of the PMs are way more impressive than they sound, and how to fix that. And Nils, a pro at it. So Nils, welcome to the porch.
Yeah, welcome back, Nils.
It is fantastic to be back. Got my glass of not sweetened iced tea, which I should have, but it's tea, so at least we're there. And great to be here again.
Yeah, great to see you again. And Nils, I was talking about interviews. Do you see some of the same problem in resumes? And what are you seeing when you're seeing these product manager resumes for the first time?
So, I see lots of resumes, and I feel like what they show is that these people have never heard of the concept of go-to-market. They're not thinking of themselves as products. They may never have heard the term sell or positioning. They've heard the term storytelling, I'm sure, but it doesn't show up on their resumes. I'm kind of thinking that product managers, we all know we're the smartest people in the room. That's part of our role, right? We're very smart. We have this very wide range of skills. We have to be able to handle ourselves no matter what happens. We are very good at improvising and giving answers. And I think that's part of what you're seeing as well, is people are going in and saying, well, whatever they ask me, I'm ready for it. I'll just handle it. I'll just improvise, right? Without remembering that there are some things that they need to prepare for. It's almost like they think they're the only candidate, for the job, and they're going to just show off about how great they are with their thinking and their cleverness, and that will make you want to select them. And they forget that there's 50 other people that you're looking at who are all highly qualified. That's part of the problem. It used to be that you didn't have to do that kind of research on a company because you were competing against a handful of other people who were comparable to you. Well, now you're competing against 50 other people that are highly qualified, and some of them are doing their homework. And they certainly know all the frameworks, and they practice their interview answers a ton. And so if you don't do that, you're not going to get the interview. But you're not going to get the interview because you also didn't make your resume stand out from those other 50 qualified people. And that's what I help people with.
I love the connection to go to market, because I love that. Like, if you're going to market, you bring your product to market, you have to understand who your audience is. You have to understand what the competition is like. You have to know how to position yourself uniquely in differentiated way so that people see your product as the obvious choice.
Yeah.
And so I love that connection. It's very much aligned with job seeking.
100%. You know, one of the things that I never see on a resume, and I don't know if you see this, is a differentiator. Nobody ever has differentiators on their resumes.
Oh.
You know, what people do, and they spend a lot of time on this, and it makes no sense, and it's really dumb, is they spend time customizing their resume for the job description. And what does that mean? It means they look like 50 other people who have customized their resume for the job description. So it doesn't actually, what it does is it puts them in a negative direction from where they should be, which is trying to differentiate themselves. Now, you have to show that you have the skills, right, as a product manager if you're going for a PM role. But you also need to show that there's some reason to talk to you over the other 50 qualified people who are also going for the role. And making your resume match the job description is totally the opposite direction from that.
So Nils, can I play devil's advocate on this? Are human beings even looking at resumes anymore?
Yes, they are. They are. In fact, there is a boogeyman out there, the ATS, the applicant tracking system, and everybody's blaming everything on the ATS. And what I hear from many, many recruiters who I know and who I read and follow on LinkedIn, the things that people accuse the ATS of are not happening. ATSs are not automatically rejecting people based on keywords. Certainly not based on keywords. If they're rejecting people, it's based on, do you have a right to work in the U.S.? No. Okay, you're rejected. For certain jobs, right? That's a requirement. But they're not rejecting people based on keywords. It's a human being that's rejecting you. You know, you have to think about the human being who's looking at your resume, because their goal is to disqualify you if they can, because they have a giant stack and they want to make that stack smaller. And so you can't give them any excuses for disqualifying you, even if you're qualified. And they're not going to read between the lines because they have that giant stack. They're not going to spend a couple minutes reading through to try to figure out, well, does this person really know what they're doing? You know, blah, blah, blah. No, they're not going to do that. They're going to disqualify you really quickly if they can. And that means if you'd say on your resume, if you don't say you're a product manager and you're going for a product manager role, instant disqualification in many cases, right? Now, Todd, I don't know what your experience is with reading these as the hiring manager. You're probably getting a somewhat filtered list or set of resumes, but you're still probably going through and saying, I can't figure out what this person does.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit because, and Joe, you appreciate where Nils started here. He started with the who. Joe is all about starting with the who, which is a great product principle. So let's start with the who. I want to talk to you a little bit about the hiring manager recruiter relationship.
Okay.
No matter where I've hired, one thing has remained the same with the recruiter, and that is I have to give them some insight into what I want. And I have to be able to help them and give them insight into what you said, Nils. They have a stack and they need to know how to cut through the stack. And so I give them some keys. Look for this, look for that. If I see this, I don't want to see it. So, you know, for example, you talked about the product manager role. If I'm looking for a product manager right now, there's saturation in the market. So it's not hard for me to find a product manager. So when I'm looking for a product manager and I was just hiring for a senior product manager role, I need someone who can come up to speed quickly. I don't have time for someone who is a project manager, but has taken a product management course, or someone who's been a business analyst for 2 years and feels ready to be a product manager. I don't have time for that. And so that's one of the things I'll tell my recruiter. Hey, I got to see actual product manager experience on there. I might tell her I want SaaS experience, or I need B2B experience, or I need a certain size company experience. They'll tell her, look for this. And then because it's me, those are things that every product hiring manager is doing. Because it's me, I have some additional things, right? And I'm throwing out some keywords. tend to be very discovery focused. So I want to see here's some things to look for. I want to see these kind of terms. You know, if I don't see those terms, it tells me they don't understand product. So I'll do things like that. But that's a big part. So one of the who is the recruiter. That recruiter knows this much, a tiny little thimbleful about product management. And they're going off the job rec that was written and the conversation they had with the hiring manager. And the hiring manager said, disqualify them for these red flags.
obviously the hiring manager understands the job in a much deeper way than the recruiter does, and in a much deeper way than the job description does as well. I advise people focus the resume, the first half of the page, on the hiring manager, and then you have to do some things to get it past the recruiter, right? Because the recruiter, as you know, is looking for keywords.
Yeah.
And actually what they use the ATS for is not for rejecting you based on keywords, but they're using the ATS to search for resumes that they have in their repository, and they want to see resumes that have the keywords on them, right? Because they don't understand the job. So they're searching for product managers who know how to do road mapping. We all know that if you're a product manager, you know how to do road mapping. That's a dumb search from our perspective. But from the recruiter's perspective, they don't know that.
Right.
That's a requirement in the job description. So you want your resume to say something about road mapping. Now, my recommendation is you have a skills section that says road mapping. And then you may or may not say road mapping in the bullet points, often because if you do the bullet points right, you don't have to say road mapping to demonstrate that you are excellent at road mapping. This is my feeling, right? What I want the bullet points to be is like a demo, a sales demo. And if you think about sales demos don't show features and functions, good ones, right? They show how you solve a problem. In fact, they don't show how you solve the problem. The best ones show how a successful customer, just like the prospect, solved a problem like the one the prospect has, and the impact it had on their business as a result. It's very little about the solution, a good demo.
Right.
It's about, this terrible experience is going to turn into a great situation for you if you use our stuff.
Correct.
How do you translate that into a resume? Well, you have to start from a story about how you, as the product manager, solved a really meaningful problem by doing something, and it had a really big impact on the business.
Yes.
And if you can tell that story in a very compact way, the hiring manager is going to say, oh, I have that problem. Oh, I can see that this person, he or she, did some things that imply a huge amount of skills, and I want that result.
How do you do that in bullets? So I know how you do that in an interview, and I look for the same, because for me, I have seen way too many product features and products go wrong because they fail to identify the true problem.
Yeah.
So when I interview, I want product managers who are good at describing the problem they had, because I go, okay, that problem is clear to me, and now they can connect the dots to the solution. How do you do that in a resume?
So it's a process, actually. So first of all, you have to articulate the story of what you did. And when I say articulate the story, I mean you have to go say, here's all the things here's all the symptoms of the problem. Here's the problem. Here's all the symptoms of that problem. Here's why the problem was really important. Here's what was going to happen if we didn't solve the problem, etc. And then you say, okay, here's all the things that I did to solve it. First of all, how did you get involved in solving that problem, right? I was selected to solve the problem because of my past history in solving other problems like this, or this just happened to be my job, or I was hired to solve this problem, whatever it might be. And then I did some discovery to figure out what needed to be done. Then I came up with a roadmap and a vision, and then I persuaded leadership to fund it. And then I built it, usually the least interesting part of the whole thing, right? Yep. And then I took it to market in a phased way using some pilots and some betas, and we learned some things and we refined it. And in 12 months, we had a solution in the market, right? That's what you did. And then the transformation was, and all the problems that we had before, we eliminated them all. And, sales grew by, sales doubled, or our sale rate of growth tripled, or whatever it might be. And I was recognized for my leadership for this success. And the pattern that I established is now being used for lots of other projects, right? So that's a story. That's a big, long story.
So basically, Nils, the way I'm reacting to it is we have to think of our resumes as a series of short stories, and not, here are all my accomplishments in the last 15 years as a product manager. It's more about, kind of like what you said, it's like a series of short stories.
Yeah.
That's a completely different way of looking at resumes, by the way.
So once you have this long, so there's another step here, really, Joe. Once you have the long story, right? It was maybe what you say in an interview. Around 200 words is a great interview answer for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then you make, and I use the AI to help me with this, but you can't do it if you don't have the story already. I make a 45-word version. So it's a long bullet. It's not the longest bullet ever seen, but it's long. And that bullet has a little bit about the problem, a little bit about what you did, and a little bit about the impact. And usually it's like, when people see these bullets, they say, I'm kind of a badass. I mean, people have literally said that to me.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't, and you compare it to the bullet they originally had, which was incomprehensible. And also, it was either incomprehensible or interchangeable with many, many other resumes, bullets on many other resumes. And suddenly it's now a unique thing that tells a whole story, that gives the hiring manager an ability to say, oh, this person took on this problem. Guess what? I have that problem. They did something cool about it. Oh, they must have a lot of skills. Oh, and the transformation was fantastic. I want to know more about that.
That process you just talked about, Nils, every time you see a role that you're going to apply to, does that mean you have to, as a product manager, research the company, see what you can find, read the news, read what's going on in LinkedIn, and then based off what you've learned about the organization and potentially the product, then you're going to choose what stories you're going to put on your resume?
You can do that if you have a big story bank, sure.
Yeah.
If you don't have a very big story bank, it turns out that most product managers are actually facing similar problems. So the set of stories that's going to work for Todd is likely to work for you as a hiring manager, or is likely to work for somebody else. Obviously, if it's B2B versus B2C, there might be differences. If it's, enterprise versus small business, there might be some differences. Or, if it's an internet infrastructure company versus an e-commerce company, right? You can imagine there's different things. Even then, you'd be surprised at how many product managers in many, many different companies have a story about transforming a legacy manual process into an automated process. They all have the same things in common, right? The legacy process was slow. It was full of errors. It caused them financial risk and audit risk and compliance risk. They did something about it. And as a result, it got 10 times faster, or maybe 100 times faster. All the audit risks went away. Every industry has that problem, or has had that problem over time, right? And so if you have a story like that, that's going to work for almost anybody.
So I've completely rethought the resume now with this conversation. I like this positioning of it. I would love to see some resumes that you've put together for people in the past and what they look like with this process. And the reason I love it is, I interview product managers, product marketing managers, and UX designers. Mm-hmm. One thing I love about interviewing UX designers is they all have portfolios. It's 1,000 times better than a resume. And the best UX designers, when you go into their portfolio, describe, this is the user. This is the problem they were having. They might describe the approach. This is how we approached solving the problem. This is what we ended up with and why it worked or didn't work. And then you can actually see the work, right? It's fantastic. Because ultimately, what I love about this way of doing the resume for a product manager is, I have the belief, and I will say this, not every product leader does, but I have the belief. If you are a product manager and you have strong product thinking, I can put you anywhere. If you are very good at making B2C mobile apps, then I can get you when I'm making a B2C mobile app. But if you are very good at product thinking, I can fire you anywhere. That sounds fire you off meaning. I can point you in any direction.
We know what you're
put you in any
Todd.
direction and send you off, right? And that's the thing is, if I look at that resume, I love the way you said it. Now, I would love to know what other hiring managers think, but me personally, when reading a resume like that, let me tell you something else I do in my interview process. One of the things I'm famous for, I love doing, is I have people give TED Talks. They don't know they're giving a TED Talk. I don't have them prepared for a TED Talk. But if they show up, I ask them the question about their business. I tell them a little bit about what I'm hiring for. And then I say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start off with a little TED Talk. Just a little 10-minute TED Talk from you about product management. Mm-hmm. And I just want you to pretend you're speaking to a room full of aspiring product managers. And I want you to tell me what product management is, why does it matter, how to do it. And I want you to use your career as an example. It tells me so much when they do that. But what's funny is if their resume was to tell me, Todd, here's the problem. They wouldn't say Todd in their resume, but here's the problem. Here's the problem. Here's what I did about it. Here was the result. And I saw that over and over again. I'd be like, okay, this person gets, I got to talk to this person. They get it.
Yeah.
They at least get what our job is.
Let's say someone gets passed. Let's say they get their resume gets noticed.
Sure.
Todd, when you and I talked about this, you were interviewing people that literally didn't understand what Better RX was doing. They didn't understand the mission, what your product did, the challenges. And I couldn't believe it, to be honest with you, because I'm like, how does someone, well, actually, I can't believe it because I've been in their shoes before. But even like if somebody calls you back, that is like, you're going to do cartwheels because you know your resume stood out amongst 100, 1,000, right? So you're going to want to do everything in your power to impress that hiring manager. Yeah. And I remember like you and I talked about this, like, especially when you have a tool like ChatGPT or Copilot, that if you write just a couple of really good prompts, you'll get that info really fast. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's fair. And, to say more about that, so if we think about this in go-to-market, I love some things Nils has covered already, right? So we think about go-to-market, we have to know how to sell our product. We have to understand the value it brings, right? We have to understand how to sell it. I want to talk about positioning, differentiation. Got to talk about that. But before we get there, something else that as part of this is you also can't sell into a market you don't understand.
Yeah.
And that's what baffles me. You get past the recruiter. You're now sitting with the product man or with the hiring manager. That's your audience. That's who you're selling to.
Yeah.
How do you not understand this person you're selling to? Which brings me to another part of research. If the hiring manager you're interviewing with is active, when I interviewed for my current position, my hiring manager was a CEO. Well, I found webinars he had done, videos he had done. I got to know him a little bit before I actually spoke with him, had a sense of who he was. If you're fortunate enough that your hiring manager has written some LinkedIn posts, has an article out there, wrote a book or whatever else, why wouldn't you go consume that content and better position yourself as you meet with them?
Makes total sense. Yeah, why wouldn't you? And the reality is, irrespective of whether you think it's a good idea, whether you think you're the smartest person in the room, your competitors, the other candidates, are doing all that stuff.
Totally.
Even if you think it's dumb, you should know going into it that your competitors they're putting 50 hours of work into prepping for this interview.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to do 50 hours of work, but you should do some.
I want to tell you how I approach job seeking. So I like mentoring people, and I've helped other people get jobs. I'm good at the interview part.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not great at the resume part. I'm actually, since you've been talking, Nils, I'm like, I don't even want to look at my last resume. It's probably embarrassing. I love where I'm at, but if I ever need to move on, Nils, you'll be getting a call from me. You'll need to work with me. I'll need to work with you. Here's my mindset. I want to give you Todd's mindset for interviewing. Joe, I think, has heard this before. When I go into interview, I'm actually not interviewing to get the job. That's not my goal. To your point, Nils, I'm very aware there are other people involved. My goal is to put a single thought in the hiring manager's head. That thought is, do I pay Todd what he's worth, or do I accept less? In my mind, what they need to think is, we either pay Todd everything he's worth, or we're going to have to accept something less than Todd. That's my goal. And that's how I approach, that's my mindset and how I put together my resume, how I write my emails, how I write my messages. Everything is designed to, that's the thought I want in their head.
Well, that's your swagger.
Job. That's the job to be done, Joe.
It's swag. Yeah.
It's your swag. It's your swagger.
You're going in as the Mercedes-Benz, and if they're not willing to pay the Mercedes-Benz price, you're not for them.
But Todd, we live in a reality. Nils mentioned this at the very beginning of the podcast. There is more supply than demand. LinkedIn is a sad place right now.
The nature of the fact that BMW is more expensive and better means that they will sell fewer than Honda sells of Accords.
And that is the thing. So if we bring it into to hiring, if you're asking for the top of the range or above the range, then you've actually set a bar for yourself. You can't be good enough. You have to be supremely and obviously better. Now, let me say this, because it has to be said, because Joe goes, that's your brand. Now I feel like maybe my brand is pure ego. Well, let me specify something here. That's not to say that I think I'm the best thing in the world all the time and the best at every position. I say all the time, I can be replaced. Anyone can be replaced. What I just mean about that is when I have that mindset, it sets me up to think, oh, that's right. Like, I'm not just trying to win the job. I'm trying to show them that I'm worth everything they can pay for me. That motivates me to shoot much higher than just I'm trying to get the job.
Right. Well, it's the same, the metaphor holds with the BMW, right? They can't just rest on their laurels in terms of what they put in a car, because now a Honda has what was in a BMW 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And so they have to continually be innovating and raising the game all the time. And Mercedes does that. Everybody does that, right? So, and I love that you're going in with a sense of, I'm not going to pre-discount. I'm going to show that I'm worth the full price. And then we get to the negotiation, and maybe then there's a discount required. But we didn't start out with a discount, with me already with a discount in my brain, right?
I think in today's job market, I think a lot of product managers go in with a discount.
They definitely do.
Because they're desperate. And I mean, guys, let's be fair. If you have a family to support and you didn't get much of a severance, we're human.
Yeah.
It's hard not to react that way. It's humbling.
Yeah.
Let me share a story of someone I've been mentoring recently. She's a star. There's no doubt about it. She was in a tough place, and she had considered discounting herself many times, going for positions that were, big steps backwards in her career and lower salary. And when she started interviewing for a particular job, I told her my mindset. Your goal is to make them think they pay you what you're worth or they accept less. That's your goal. And she went at it. Now, even when we talk, she would tell me, Todd, I'm nervous. I asked for the top of the range. I've showed them all this. I'm nervous. I'm pricing myself out. But the great thing is I got to watch her along the process and the way that they were working with her. And I said, no, you're not. They love you. They obviously love you. You came out with a home run swing to start the game. So they're already going, holy cow, she's better than everyone else. Now, as long as you just keep that up, they're not going to let you run away, because she's just afraid they're going to walk away and say, you know what, you're too expensive. I'm like, they're not going to do that. Worst case scenario, they will throw you all the money they have and it will be less than you want. And then you can decide whether or not you want to go to that position. But I'm like, you have put yourself in the catbird seat. And sure enough, that's what they did. And they ended up going above the range to go get her. But she was, and we talked a few months earlier when we were talking, she said, I'm not desperate. And I said, you are desperate. Like, I told her that, because she was, to your point, Joe, she was in a desperate situation. She'd been without a job for a few months. It was tough. But what I love about the way she approached that last job that she ended up getting is she kept that in mind. She kept in mind, I know, to your point, Nils, I know I'm badass. I'm going to go in and do the things I know how to do. And I'm just going to keep going. And if you do that and you're selling your value, just like a product, the worst case scenario is someone will offer you less money than you want. That is the worst case scenario. No one will just walk away. No one's going to go, wow, Joe is the obvious winner. He's obviously the best, but he seems too expensive. Let's not even try to get him. No one will do that. They'll at least put out their best offer.
Yeah. Well, going back to what Joe said, though, about people pre-discounting, part of it is really that they don't know how to present their value. Nobody knows what their differentiator is. Maybe you know, Todd, but most people do not. And when I say differentiator, it doesn't differentiate. You're not necessarily differentiated from 100% of the other candidates, but it should be something that you can talk about yourself that makes you interesting and is not on the job description,
Right.
And that makes you potentially a better choice for the hiring manager than the other candidates. I mean, it's not that hard in one sense, because most people do not put a differentiator on their resume.
It's true.
And so if you put one, that is differentiating in itself. And of course, it really helps if it's an actual differentiating differentiator. And it doesn't. There's some that will not work, right? If you say I have a reputation for being customer obsessed as a product manager, yeah, that's in the job description. You're not telling me anything interesting.
Everyone has to be that. Can you tell me? So, last time you were on the porch, we talked about spikes. This connects with that a lot, the product spikes.
Yeah.
Can you give me some examples of good differentiators you've seen? And then maybe how do you make this stand out in a resume?
I have a very simple rubric for how the first part of the resume goes, the summary. So the summary to me of the resume should be a value proposition. I'm the thing you're looking for. You'd be shocked at how many resumes don't say I'm a product manager if they're going for a product manager role, and they expect the reader to guess or to infer. So the first line is, I am a product manager, and you put a little bit more information in there. The second line is, I've done the job. Something that says, I'm not just saying I'm a product manager, I've done the job of being a product manager. And the third line is, I have a reputation for. and the reputation for is where you put the differentiator. And I use that structure because it makes it sound like like social proof, right? Because other people will validate it if you ask them.
Yeah.
And so, for example, here's one. I have a reputation for turning struggling platforms into revenue-generating powerhouses by identifying counterintuitive user patterns that competitors consistently miss.
Oh, now that's the spice right there. The counterintuitive part is the spice.
Yeah.
That that competitors miss. Spicy. Now, see, if someone hit me with a LinkedIn message, we didn't even talk about LinkedIn.
Yep.
I can tell you about the thousands of LinkedIn messages I've received that are just spam.
Yeah.
But if someone hit me with that line, I'd be interested.
And the thing is, these are not the most amazing differentiators, right? But those are things that you're not going to see on everybody's resume, and that make you, Todd, say, "Oh, that's kind of interesting. I think I'll keep reading."
Yes.
Maybe they'll tell me more about this. And of course, the second piece is you need to have stories in your experience section that support that. Ideally, more than one.
Yes.
You don't have to,
Yes.
but if you've done it more than once, usually I have a reputation for it means I've done it more than once, right?
Right.
And so you have a couple of stories that back that up. And then the whole thing is sort of tying together, and you notice that differentiator, and you say, "Oh, I want to know more about this." And then you find out more, and you say, "Oh, that was even more impressive than I thought."
So, Todd, let me ask you this: as a hiring manager, do you go through every message on LinkedIn? Because I mean,
okay,
I've talked to other hiring managers, and they ignore it. They're like, the moment I post a job, I have 500 messages. I can't get through all of them. Are you telling me you go through all of them?
No. First off, I don't. Secondly, I call that out when I put jobs on LinkedIn. I call out, look, if I don't know you or you don't know someone who knows me, I'm not going to read your message.
Okay, that's good to know.
I put that line. I put the disclaimer. If you go back and look at jobs I've posted in LinkedIn, you'll see that. But what I'll do is I still will cursely scroll through at times, right? I mean, we all have we're on our phone in the bathroom. So I'll scroll through some LinkedIn messages and look really quick, but it has to snag my eye. Let me tell you what I see over and over and over again. I think everyone thinks this is a great message, and it's the same message every time. It's, "Hey, Todd, saw you're posting for a product manager in the healthcare B2B space. I have been in the healthcare B2B space for X number of years and have brought healthcare B2B products to market." I mean, literally every single one says that. 15 years, 12 years, 7 years. That tells me nothing. Now, occasionally someone will go as far as to say, "I'm really connected to your mission to end needless suffering." Okay, that's slightly better. Still doesn't really catch my eye. But what I am looking for is, so if someone had wrote this, "Hey, listen to the product porch. You said that you would be interested in counterintuitive thinking. Here's something I did that's counterintuitive." Be like, "Well, frick. Got to talk to that guy." I mean, tell me something different. I've told you, Joe, come at me with some spice. Give me something. Todd, I don't believe outcomes over outputs is the way. I believe that you drive outcomes with outputs, but you need to be focused on outputs. And these are the outputs I focus on. I'd be like, "Well, I don't know that I agree with that, but I got to talk to that guy." Like, give me something more than just, "I have 15 years of B2B product." I know. So does everyone else.
The thing about the differentiator on the resume is that the reality is nobody knows what their differentiator is. And it takes usually a lot of conversation to come up with what it is. It's like one person I was talking to who was a product manager who, as a IC product manager in a big company, had transformed her team. We were talking about this story, and she transformed her team from being like a feature factory to being very product led and high output. And I said, "Oh, that's not something that most ICs do just on their own." Right. And she said, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. It was easy. I've done it a couple times." and it's like, "Oh, okay, that's your
superpower.
That's
your
a differentiator.
differentiator.
A superpower and a differentiator."
I remember a quote from Nils. I remember a Nils quote, and I see if I got this right. I think what you said before was, "Your obvious is your art." Is that right?
That's right. Wonderful.
That.
Yeah. And so it can be the case that your differentiator is your superpower. Not every superpower really works as a differentiator. But that one, for that person, I was really impressed with that. And she said, I did it a couple times. So that was easy,
The superpower, or like the differentiator, that resonates with me because I had gotten that feedback in my journey. And one of the ways to get there, because it's like, I don't know what that is. Interviewing your network, interviewing people in your network, asking them, hey, we work together, be honest with me. Like, what stuck out? Like, what did I do well? What didn't I do well? Right. But it's like, you can get to that understanding by just spending time networking and asking people for that feedback. And then many times you're going to arrive at some key themes that will help you identify what your differentiator is.
The one thing I would say, because I've done a little bit of that as well, right? And I reach out to people and so how would you characterize my, what was the question I asked them? But something like that. And what I got was, it was very gratifying. It wasn't a differentiator, but it was just like, I'm really good at getting everybody to understand stuff, right? Which is sort of what, and really better than other product managers, but it's also kind of required for product. I mean, that's a part of the job description. It doesn't carry much weight on a resume, unfortunately. Yeah. But it's definitely a valuable thing to do, Joe. No question about it. And you might just discover, because what you want to listen for in the superpower thing is something where people say, I don't know how you did that. And your response is, well, I don't understand because it's obvious anybody could do it. The other flip side of that is, there's something you do and you don't understand why other people don't do it.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And for me, that's a lot of what I do with the resume stuff, right? I've sort of just commercialized that. I say, well, why did you do that thing? I always want to know, what's the background? Why is this thing happening? Right. And people apparently don't ask that question. And I ask people that about what they did, and suddenly we have a story. I'm not a natural storyteller at all. I had to learn how to do this. Like my relatives, my wife's dad, anything that happened to him was a story. He could turn it into a story instantly. And sometimes they're boring little stories, but they're always stories. And I never had that. I never learned how to do that. I had to learn how to do it as an old person practically. Then I polished it. So it wasn't like a natural power for me, but it became something that's part of the reason I feel comfortable teaching people it, because I had to learn it, And
I love that example, right? I love that example of you're leveraging a skill that you've learned. I'll end with one more thing. I know, Joe, we need to get to key takeaways. I used to say this all the time about our building products and selling products. You talked about in the demo, we're going to tell a story about how someone used our product, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I'm looking to build a product, I try not to chase competitors, especially when I'm behind in the marketplace. And there's mature products out there, and I'm early stage. I don't want to chase them because that's an endless journey of features, adding features where I'm never gonna get there. They have feature A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I'm never gonna get there. I need to find that thing X, that benefit X that they don't have.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend of mine, I connected him with someone for a job in marketing because he's so creatively talented. So I connected him with this job interview. And after the interview, I spoke with the hiring manager who was a friend of mine. And I said, so how'd he do? And she's like, I liked him. He was good. And I was like, oh, that's not great. I said, tell me more. And she goes, well, he talked a lot about data and how he leverages data. And I think that's great, but I need someone who's really creative. And I'm sitting there going, wait a second. My friend whose superpower is his creativity did not sell you on his creativity. So I said, I think you need to talk to him one more time. And I called my buddy and I said, listen, she's looking for a creative. That's your superpower. But he was so worried about his area where he wasn't as strong that he was trying to oversell that area.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing to always remember is, why do people buy products? They don't buy a product for the area that it's good enough. They buy the product for the area it's better than everything else. So I tell people all the time, yes, have your bases covered. Sure. Have a story for everything in the resume. Sure. But make sure your story about your value proposition that's so much better than everyone else's, make sure that's clear. That's the reason why people buy.
Great advice.
All right. Key takeaways. Nils, we'll start with you. What are your key takeaways? Just from the conversation, what was your key takeaway?
Well, so I love Todd's question that he asked people. Tell me about this company and the job. It shows so many potential pitfalls of the person if they can't answer that. And I really appreciated that when I read you my differentiators so I have a list of them over here that I refer to. And when I read a few of them, you really resonated with them. That was very good for me.
Well, my first takeaway is, when it's time for me to write a resume again, I need to call Nils. I don't even want to look at my resume now. I don't even want to look at my last resume. It's going to be embarrassing. Really, I love it. You like broke something in my brain. It was awesome. It's exciting when you talked about how you write the story in the resume. And I'm thinking, I'm like, oh man, if I was to do one tomorrow and I didn't have Nils to help me, I would be so bold as to putting right in my resume, problem, solution, outcome. I would just be so bold as to do that because I'd be like, you know what? I don't know if anyone's doing this. I don't know if this is exactly how Nils does it, but I just love that concept of I'm going to make it very clear for the person looking at my resume. I can describe the problem. I did something awesome to solve it, and there was an outcome. Because I also see too many outcomes. There's a lot of outcomes, and I don't even know what they mean. People are like, I increased ARR by 15%. And I'm like, is that good? What else was, I don't even know. So who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Contextless metrics are useless.
My key takeaway is the positioning statement, the differentiator. Like literally, I'm thinking after it's my first and last name, my LinkedIn link, and my phone number or email, it's literally what's my differentiator as a product leader. Like, I don't think people knew that. I couldn't look at my resume today and tell you that I'm very clear about what it is that makes me unique as a product leader. And I think that there's just so much to take away from this.
Nils, I'm sure after people listen to this, they're going to be like, okay, I need some help too. Let me chat with Nils. What's the best way for them to find you?
Easiest way is to go find me on LinkedIn. So it's easy. It's my name, Nils Davis is the link. And of course, you'll be able to find me because I'm connected to you guys and all kinds of folks. I write a lot about resumes on LinkedIn. But if you go to my LinkedIn profile, there's a link that says, make your resume amazing. You click on that, you can set up a free resume review. I love product management. I want product managers to be successful. And I like to help people get out of their own way.
I kind of want to just have the conversation just for the ego boost.
Yeah.
That would be nice. Oh, this is fantastic. Nils, honestly, I could have talked for another hour. This was so fun. I really appreciate it. So hopefully we'll get the trilogy at some point.
Yep, love it. I'll come back anytime.
The trilogy.
We'll have the Nils series.
I love the porch.
Nice. Thank you, Nils. It was great seeing you again.
You bet.
All right.
Good to see you guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for joining us on the Product Porch. We release new episodes every 2 weeks. You can also find us on LinkedIn for more content. We offer a special thank you to AJ and Jack Blaquiere for the music. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts of this podcast are their own and do not represent nor necessarily reflect those of their employer.